The other week I wanted to play a game, specifically a dinosaur game, except the type of game I wanted to play, it doesn't exist.
Aww.
So, being a game developer, I did the natural thing. I set myself a 14-day challenge to create a very ambitious dinosaur game, just so I can play it. And as long as this isn't a disaster, hopefully you can too. Come on a journey with me and see how the next 14 days go as I bring to life Prehistoric World. This video is jam-packed and one hell of a journey, so make sure to stick around until the end for the full experience. And this video is kindly sponsored by Brilliant, which I will tell you all about later in the video. Whilst I'm getting the engine sorted, let me tell you about my idea. Prehistoric World is a game all about capturing moments. You have a camera, you have a jeep, and you have a wondrous but yet familiar world of dinosaurs at your fingertips. The world is alive. Dinosaurs travel, move in herds, hunt, eat, sleep and rest. The sun rises and falls, and the world is happening before you, not because of you. It's a game design which leans into the philosophy of giving the player a playground, a couple of toys, and saying, go do stuff. But in this case, the playground is a vibrant and stylized take on Earth 66 million years ago, and the toy is a camera. I could really summarize this by saying, imagine a dinosaur documentary like Prehistoric Planet or Walking with Dinosaurs, make it stylized, now imagine you were a cameraman in that situation. That's the game. You can probably see what I meant by this being a little bit different. One last thing before we start the development. For full transparency, I am using 2 asset packs and one kind of an asset pack. The 2 asset packs are cartoon dinosaurs, and then the third quote-unquote asset pack is actually my own assets. I made them a short while ago for a bigger ongoing project, but they were somewhat intended for a world like this one. Anyway, now we're all on the same page with the idea, let's start with the player's main component, the camera. I went with a subdivision modelling approach, finessing and balancing vertices into the shape of a camera. Individual pieces such as buttons and screens were made separately and put on top to keep things cleaner to work with. I'm looking to get a balance between recognisable functionality, but still have a fairly soft and beveled feel as to keep a stylised feel. I did some basic topology optimization to make it a little bit more mid-poly, then unwrapped and baked. Now ready to texture, I used my own camera as a reference point to try and add additional details to the buttons. The snapper saw is 100% accurate. Getting the camera set up in engine, I also thought it would be fun to have the screen of the camera actually display the world in front of you. So I used a scene capture component and a render target to achieve this. And there we have it, our camera all done. From a cube to a camera, and that took me... oh, it took me all day. Oh good. Now that I have the camera and engine, I want to make it work, so that's going to be my focus for today. I've broken the camera down into tasks, and the first one is to make it so you can enter the camera view. Within its own blueprint, I give the camera a camera. I then add this actor into the player character, and when the player presses the right mouse button to lift the camera, it will set the view to the camera. This is gonna get confusing fast. Now with the input and functionality set up, we can build off from here. So I want to give the player the ability to control some of these settings, such as exposure, focal length, and aperture. So for example, you press the E key, and that will enable exposure editing. You then scroll between a low exposure and a high exposure value. Behind the scenes, this is a case of switching an enumeration value and allowing the scroll wheel to affect the correct camera variable. I did also set up an autofocus feature. This is simply a line trace which sets the focal point via object tracking, and I also added a composition grid. It's all working, but it's unclear to the player exactly what is going on, so that should be the next thing I do. Improve communication. I add an overlay to the camera which tells you the possible settings to edit and their current value. I did also add a colour change to the active setting being edited so it's clear whether you have it toggled on or off. We've had the veg, now it's time for the meat of the camera. That's weird. Taking a photo. On paper it might sound like a simple thing, but this is game development. The word simple doesn't exist. The way I'm going to approach this is by taking a screenshot via a console command. Fortunately, as part of a console command, you can specify a folder and name for the photo. What I can't do is directly save that photo as a texture, but I can import a 2D texture from a file path. You can probably see where this is going. So the way I save the photos is that when you take one, I save the file path which was created, then whenever I need that photo for any reason, like displaying it, I access the file path from the saved game. It's a neat workaround. I say workaround, but I'm not sure how else you'd actually handle something like this. Either way, we can take photos now. Oh, he's so happy to be here, look at him. I did quickly make a preview photo pop up. This is an animated image widget which will show the last file path saved. It's a nice way to just double check you did actually capture the photo you intended to, especially once these guys figure out how to walk. I would quite like to see my works of art, so let's move on to the gallery next. My plan is to have the player access a laptop on which the photos are stored and displayed, but for that of course I need a laptop, so I hopped on to CG Trader, found a free to use model, edited it a bit, retextured, and then imported. I set it up as a blueprint, and from there I can start to display the appropriate UI elements, such as the photo gallery. The photo gallery is a grid containing photo widgets. These photo widgets are added and have their textures set based on the saved file path array. So if you have 5 photos on your saved directory, it will load 5 widgets within the grid and it'll set the texture to be whatever the file path imported. Now every photographer needs to be able to tweak their photos, so let's make that possible to do by creating a photo editing section. This is handled as a completely separate widget. A UI material is added to the image in order to display it. This is an important distinction as it allows me to create a dynamic material instance and therefore edit parameters within the material. In other words, edit parameters for the photo being displayed. It's enough controls to fine tune a photo into something more polished, which is very nice. I would love to add LUTs or watermarks as an option, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. There is a lot more still to do. We all occasionally take a bad photo, so it's only fair you can delete them. Clicking the delete button checks that you're definitely sure, and then it'll remove the file path from the save file. It's now the end of day 2, and I'm finding the more stuff I'm adding, the more excited I am about it. Like, it's cool taking a picture of a fern, but now I want to get into the bigger world and start taking pictures of dinosaurs in the wild. I am working in 5.6, which is the latest engine version. Typically you shouldn't really do that, but I want to try out the new fluid simulation stuff. Having said that, I have found that the first person shooter template scene, which I've just been testing in, is really quite laggy. Like, this hasn't been an issue in previous versions of the engine, so I do have that concern in the back of my mind, but hey, once I get in a fresh level, maybe it'll be just fine. Yesterday we got the photo editing working from a visual point of view, but you can't actually save a photo as of now, which is pretty important. So that's going to be my focus for today. My hope was to follow the same process of taking a screenshot, saving the file path, and in theory, that works. However, the screenshots don't capture UI, and the edited photo is a UI element, so that's not an option. I need to have the photo display in world space, so I created a blueprint with a world space widget in it and put the photo on that. That way you can take a screenshot and jobs are good, and don't be silly, of course it's not. There is one remaining hurdle to leap over. The problem comes from the consistency between how the photo looks when you edited it and when the new screenshot is taken. There's a bit of a difference. It's not massive, but you can tell. The widget originally was actually black in the scene, and I fixed this by increasing the emissive intensity of the material so that it was visible to see. Now, because I did this, and there were some inaccuracies from edit to save photo, my assumption was that I hadn't got the emissive value quite right. And it's a fair assumption to make, but I did end up down a bit of a trial and error path, which was both time consuming and frustrating. As I tried to find the right emissive value, it was a classic case of getting caught up in one direction. After a while, I suspected it was actually due to the exposure, so I divided the emissive by the eye adaptation value to balance the emissive based on scene exposure, and it helped, but it still wasn't 100%. So my solution was right with the exposure, but also slightly wrong. And the way I was going about it was never going to give a 100% correct image. That's because what I needed to do was apply the eye adaptation after tone mapping, not before. And the way to apply it after tone mapping was via a post-processing material. So as part of a blueprint, I added a post-process volume and a post-process material to apply the same eye adaptation exposure division I was already doing. You're probably wondering, how did I figure that out? I did not. This very random video I found when troubleshooting was the key to fixing this issue, so thank you. I was starting to go a little crazy, playing the world's weirdest game of spot the difference. The silver lining to this was that I did make some improvements to the contrast and tint editing options, but man, that was a time-consuming fix and a lot of problem solving. This is why, if anyone asks me what are the best things you can learn when it comes to game development, besides the obvious answers like a game engine, my answer is always problem solving and critical thinking. It doesn't matter what area of game development you're in, they are going to be so important in creating any game. Which is why I'm excited to tell you all about Brilliant. Brilliant is built to help you become a better thinker and problem solver, which is perfect for game development. It has thousands of visual and interactive lessons in maths, science, data analysis, AI, and the category I use the most, programming. If you saw my last video, you'll know I'm in need of it. Brilliant's collection of programming courses teach you from the ground up, which means not only learning the actual language, but it does importantly teach you to think like a programmer and develop the appropriate problem solving skills. It isn't about memorizing, it's about building real knowledge and becoming a better thinker. Its design of letting you play with concepts is a method proven to be 6 times more effective than watching lecture videos. So whether you're a game dev veteran looking to level up your problem solving skills, or you're starting a new journey into the world of game development, you can learn for free on Brilliant by going to brilliant.org/themagictorch, or you can scan the QR code on screen, or you can even click the link in the description. Brilliant has also given viewers of this channel 20% off an annual premium subscription, which gives you unlimited daily access to everything on Brilliant. Go check it out, and back to the dinosaurs. After a bit of a head mashing few hours of fixing the photo editing, I was enjoying being able to experience the full loop of taking a photo, editing it, and saving it in the gallery. It's satisfying to see it come together, and miraculously, despite the first bump in the road, I was still slightly ahead of schedule based on my rough original estimates. It's time to move on to the next tool in the player's kit, the Jeep. My plan here is to find a Jeep model which I can adapt into the right kind of style via texturing, so I shouldn't have to model too much and I can focus on materials. This, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call wishful thinking. Welcome to this video section of vehicle restoration, where I take old banged up models like this one and I try to turn it into something shiny and new. The deeper you go, the more mess you'll find. But no, really, the topology was quite weird. There's a lot of disconnected pieces. I mean, look at these alloys. I ended up remodeling, replacing at least half of it, and it really felt like restoring an old vehicle. There's still the base structure there, and I think just visually as a model, it works. It looks like a Jeep, but as soon as you start to look under the hood, pun intended, you realise it's going to be easier to remake it, particularly because I wanted to try and get some clean bevels to help with the softer readability of the style I want. Speaking of style, I did make some things a bit chunkier and inflated, like the padding, the lights, and even the wheels. Nonetheless, before wrap day 3, I had a high poly Jeep model, and tomorrow, hopefully, I can move on to unwrapping and texturing. Let's kickstart this day with some unwrapping, and yes, I've probably drank too much coffee. I decided to do quite a bit of mirroring, mostly to try and save time. I usually try and keep as much as possible in a single UV space, but I did also split the interior and exterior into separate materials as the UV map was getting really crowded. Unfortunately, due to the nature of unwrapping and the importance of being able to select edge loop flows, I'm finding more and more frustrating topology, which is making everything take so much longer. I keep telling myself I'm still saving time overall, but I don't know. I think I'm lying. Getting the Jeep set up in Painter wasn't as simple as just importing it, since I need to set up vertex color IDs for the different materials, otherwise I need to manually mask out each area, and I'm not doing that. I also made a second UV channel to bake an AO map. Now the reason for the second UV channel is because I'm using UV mirroring on the main channel. So if I bake the AO for one side, it'll apply to the other automatically because it's mirrored, and that might not be accurate. So I need the second channel to be completely unique and capture the vehicle as it actually is. I tried to introduce some detailing via decals like the Prehistoric World logo and Watch the Step. There's also a fun one about dinosaur weight, casually fat shaming the Triceratops. The exterior wasn't too bad, but the interior was arguably more important. It is the one space I know for sure that the player will see up close, since the idea is that they drive the Jeep. And the interior was lacking. Part of it was the model itself and not being able to get a clean subdivision, bevel, or bake out of it, but there was also just a general lack of detail. It felt flat. It was missing function. So I bit the bullet and reluctantly dragged myself back into Blender to try and quickly model up some more detailing. Someone please remind me to be more sensible in picking 3 models up next time. Whilst annoying, I think it was worth it. As you can imagine, this put me behind schedule, so already just on day 4, I'm chasing my own tail. But I am more content than I was with the Jeep previously. I feel it leaves something to be desired, but let's wait and see what it looks like in engine. And here it is in Unreal. It looks pretty good. It definitely has a Jurassic Park feel, and the material feels about right in terms of style and the way it's reacting with the light. Whoa, hey, don't look down there. Nope. Yeah, No, nothing to see down there. Don't worry about it. Okay, there were a few flip normal issues which I had to go back and forth to fix, but there we go. A Jeep and a camera on day 5. One works, one doesn't. So I guess it's time to make this Jeep drivable. As is often a running theme on this channel, I'm trying something new, and I've never made a vehicle before. I am going to be using the Chaos vehicle system in Unreal. From what I've gathered from previous research, it should be fairly plug and play. There is some setup involved, but getting it moving shouldn't be too painful.
Few moments.
It's painful. I was importing the Jeep wrong for it to work with the vehicle system, which was a bad start. I was trying to use bones and parenting them incorrectly. Instead, you should separate the wheel meshes and parent them as objects, not bones. There's also a lot of values for this vehicle system. On one hand, that's great, but on the other hand, there's a lot going on. The wheels, the engine, steering graphs, braking, it's for proper vehicle work. I was spending quite a bit of time researching what variables other people are tweaking, like what's important and what's not. If I want to make car go brum brum, what do I need to be changing? I eventually got the values feeling pretty good. The Jeep does typically cap at about 58 miles per hour, but I mean, hey, it's a newly restored vehicle, so cut it some slack. I set up the steering wheel to rotate based on your steering input so you can get a satisfying wheel spin when straightening back out, and I accidentally found out that tipping the Jeep leads to a really cool view of the T-Rex. A lot of stumbling through a new thing I've not done before, but the result is pretty fun. There's no environment, there's no movement, there's no audio, and it's still pretty cool. Time consuming, but I guess I shouldn't be too surprised that a new thing I've not done before is time consuming. I warmed up for the day by enjoying yesterday's work of a Jeep, which I would describe as responsive, reliable, and bug-free, because that's clearly self-driving. That's a self-driving feature. That is yeah, not a bug. I put the laptop in the Jeep so the player can safely access their photo gallery and touch up their photos without risk of being eaten. This did mean adjusting the way the laptop was interacted with, so it's open with a line trace now, not an overlap. And it works nicely. Oh. Never mind. It makes for an interesting photo at least. It's still going. I'd left the collision on for the laptop so it's messing with the car physics, hence the rocket launch you just saw. With the ability to take photos, edit them, drive a Jeep, and access the laptop, a lot of the gameplay was in place now. So today, in day 6, it feels like a good day to shift into more of the world. Similar to the car setup, I was about to do something I'd also not done before. I'm going to use Gaia. Gaia? It's Gaia, right? Don't know if I'm saying that right, but we're going with it. And I'm going to use it to make the landscape and then import it via the Gaia plugin. I ended up with this. I wanted to create something which had a mountainous perimeter, some general variation in hills in the center, and river banking running throughout. I also wanted to try and rely on Gaia a bit more for creating masks, in which I could then apply my landscape materials to. This way I'd save myself a little bit of hassle in having to manually paint such a large space. But to be honest, the masks I got were pretty average. It helped a little bit in getting a foundation in place, but I feel like I'm going to end up painting some stuff manually either way. I did have some distance-based UV scaling working for landscape material, but that seems to have broken in 5.6. No idea why, but I did end up wrestling with that for a little bit before eventually conceding defeat and moving on. With a lot of back and forth, I eventually got the landscape to an okay point. I have the majority of the ground made up of a woodruff material, mud, and rocks for slopes. Either way, we've got a world to drive around in now, so happy days. And we're only halfway through day 6, so let's switch it up and start on something new. AI. I'm handling the AI properly in Unreal Engine with blackboards, behavior trees, AI controllers, etc. The behavior tree is what decides what tasks should run and the order they should run in, which is important. The blackboard holds your inputs and variables for these tasks, and the AI controller is typically what contains a lot of the logic and events which the behavior tree may be running. It's a bit like a communication bridge between the brain and everything else. I did have AI planned out in terms of what sort of behaviors I want, and broadly speaking, I want a form of movement, a response to being hungry, and a response to danger. I'm hoping if this behavior is kept open enough and putting dinosaurs together, it should give a pretty organic result, where carnivores try to kill, herbivores run away, and everyone just generally tries to look for food if they are hungry. Most of my initial time here is spent setting up the AI structure, but also the animation blend space and animation blueprint for the character, which in this case is a T-Rex. Because where else would I start other than this icon? I start with movement, first just trying to get a basic wander working. I always like to start with this because it checks the communication between all your parts is working properly, And from there, you can build off. For example, I then got a herbivore set up and introduced a different form of movement. Instead of just wandering to random nearby points, the herbivore will locate the nearest migration point, which I put in the scene, and then sets that as the location to move to. The migration point is nothing more than just an actor called migration point. I did have a bug in which the herbivore would never reach the migration point because the cube of it was in the way, but I solved this by instead having it find a random navigable point around the migration blueprint, so it didn't need to be super precise. I'm only making note of this because it actually took me a couple hours to realise what the problem is. It was simply the cube was in the way. Occam's razor, it's often the simplest solution. It's a fresh day, but we're picking up where we left off. I continue to improve the herbivores by having them attempt to move in groups. Someone is feeling confident.
Ooh, you're hard, showing off.
Because I originally wasn't going to try and implement this, but I got carried away and I just wanted them all to be friends.
Ooh.
I'm doing this by randomly assigning a leader per genus. So for example, the Parasaurolophus will have a leader assigned to one of however many there happens to be in the scene. And as part of their behaviour tree, they'll check if they're a leader themselves. If they're not, they'll check is one close by. Now if there is a leader close by, then their wander location target will be the leader. If there isn't one nearby, then no worries, you just keep doing you.
Gas queen.
What this results in is the natural formation of groups over time. As the same genus come into contact with one another, assuming there is a leader, they should eventually start to move in groups. Now to build upon this even further, what I'm hoping to later do is introduce a warning system for the dinosaurs. So when one of them notices danger, they alert the same genus around them of this danger and they'll run away together. So there's a genuine benefit to being in a group. On a happier note, let's make the dinosaurs starve. The hunger status of a dinosaur is one of the main driving factors of a dinosaur's behaviour, in that it takes priority over general movement. I have a number of event timers reducing a food stat over time and checking if it reaches a certain threshold like 50%. This is where the AI controller can tell the brain, the behaviour tree, that it is hungry and it should prioritise that. For the herbivores, I have food blueprints made up of a few ferns and they'll do a sphere trace for this blueprint. If they find one, they'll move to it and initiate an eating event, and upon doing so refill their hunger, and then tell their brain, hey, I'm not hungry anymore, so I'm just going to go back to wandering again. Now if the herbivore doesn't find food, they'll keep moving around as they were and just keep searching and checking in, and if they never find any food, they will starve and die. I won't have anyone say I do not keep it light in these videos. I had to do a bit of a hacky fix for the death animation. Oh, there is again death.
Stupid death.
By placing a montage notify which will freeze the animation towards the end, otherwise the dinosaur dies and then rises again, and I don't want any ghosts in my game. And you know what, I just want to take a moment to say that the T-Rex, it gets a bad rap. It might be one of the greatest predators ever, but it isn't opposed to helping a man out with a little push start. Day 7 was jam-packed with AI progress, so I'll just race through a bunch of key things I got done. I set up the sight stimulus for the herbivores so the actors can actually see around them. Now if they see something which is a carnivore, the brain is told there is danger. Now danger will take priority over pretty much everything else, movement and hunger. The danger response is a case of running away in the opposite direction of wherever the danger was seen, and when running away, it'll do a check to see if a carnivore is still nearby, because if it is, it's probably chasing them, and if so, they'll keep running and running and running. He's out of it. He has had enough. I managed to set up the same genus alert system that I mentioned earlier, which is really cool, as groups are now genuinely beneficial to survival. The T-Rex was actually friendly, and these guys were running away for no reason, so I went and changed that. Carnivores now also see with the AI perception component, and upon seeing a herbivore, a check will be done to see if they are hungry. And if they are hungry, well, run. Hunting means chasing a herbivore, and if they reach a certain distance, they'll attempt to bite. If the trace of the bite hits, then the herbivore dies and the hunger of the carnivore is refilled. Now it's not just herbivores who should fear the carnivores, it is also you. I included the player in the sight stimulus response. The logic is pretty much the same, but the player death event will have the player respawning at the start location in the sky and the jeep will spawn with you. Hopefully it doesn't land on you. I didn't want too much consequence to death on purpose, as the aim is to just freely explore and capture photos. You shouldn't really do that in constant fear of losing anything. I also got the carnivore to attack the jeep. You are safe in the jeep, as in you can't die, but you can get launched, which is fun. And that's day 7. Today was full of progress, which is amazing, and I'm starting to see things come to life a bit more. I even just spent some time taking photos of what is already in place. It's not been a smooth journey so far, it's a lot of figuring things out and issues, but it's fun to see the ideas starting to come together. It's the magic of game development. This was nothing more than just an idea, like a craving for a game to play, and now it's starting to come to life. I've only given attention to the T-Rex and the Parasaur so far, and quite frankly, that's unacceptable because there's a lot of great dinosaurs to add into the game. And whilst I'm doing that, now is a great opportunity to ask you a very important question. What's your favourite dinosaur? Mine's the Ankylosaur, but ask me next week and it's probably something else. Let me know down below, or if you can't decide, I will accept a top 3. Adding a new dinosaur was a case of making a child blueprint from its appropriate parent, herbivore or carnivore, take your pick, setting up the blend spaces, animation blueprints, scaling it to be relatively correct to the other dinosaurs, and then just generally checking it all works. Which, considering I've just added 10 different dinosaurs, it's taken up quite a lot of my time today. I did also go a little extra with a couple of the dinosaurs. For example, the Brachiosaurus will only eat from a specific food blueprint of these tall trees. Only the Spinosaurus and T-Rex will attack the Jeep, since they are the largest carnivores. And the Velociraptors will exclusively hunt the Pachycephalosaur and the Parasaurolophus. I would have loved to have done pack hunting for the raptors, so only if they were in a group would they kill larger herbivores, but this was just my quick way of making sure they mostly attack the least armoured of them. To be honest, these guys are an absolute menace because they're really quick, and due to the way the hunting works, it's a one-shot kill. I'd be way more afraid of these than anything else. No, oh come on, there's a sponsor on this video. The final extra consideration was to randomise the scale at which dinosaurs spawn slightly. It's a subtle effect, as you can clearly see, but once it actually works, it's a quick and easy win. Setting up so many animations and dinosaurs had me tiring out of engine work, so I think it's time we switch it up and get back to some artwork. Let's make some rocks. It's the one natural asset I don't already have from my own asset work, and it's been a while since I found myself in ZBrush, so I was worried I'd be a little rusty. Here goes. My process for sculpting rocks was to focus on using the trim brushes and the polish brushes to build up the main forms and shapes on a lower subdivision and then gradually build it up. As I go up in subdivision, I'll focus on smaller shapes, but I'll never go too granular with it since I'm looking for a stylized result. My favourite type of stylization isn't super cartoony, but something a little more balanced where it looks as though it would feel like the material. It looks tangible, but it's characterful. My first rock I decided to be just a test, and what it showed me was that I need to go bigger with the shapes and forms, particularly for the baking and texturing process. I need to push the readability of it much more and not be afraid to be a bit rougher with the brush strokes. So with this in mind, I proceeded to sculpt a new boulder rock. I baked, textured and tested in Engine, and I was genuinely happier with my second attempt. So with my direction aligned, I continued to make another large rock, one medium, and then 2 smaller rocks. Making any form of 3D artwork is time consuming, and so I've had to pick this work up again in day 9. I think this smaller/medium rock actually worked out one of the best due to its irregular shapes. Its variation and balance of large, medium and small surfaces make it feel quite naturally rock-like. I wasn't sure where I was going with this at first, but I do find that with 3D and particularly sculpting, you sometimes need to just go with the flow, trust the process, and it will all work out. I baked and textured all of these rocks under a single material so they're nice and efficient, and here's a first look at them all in Engine together, like a happy little rock family. Seeing as I'm back in Engine and I have all the assets I need, I guess I'll get back to some more logic. I'm going to next handle the spawning of the dinosaurs. Now to do this, I set up a blueprint aptly named Population Manager. This basically runs a timer event which spawns a random dinosaur until a certain amount exists within the world. I've just chosen the number 100 to start because it's a very large world. It isn't completely random though, as there are population limitations per genus to ensure there are fewer of the biggest carnivores and more of the herbivores. So for example, it's not possible to spawn more than 5 T-Rexes, but you can spawn up to 20 Triceratops. It helps to try and keep a balanced ecosystem of food for both herbivores and carnivores alike. The Population Manager worked as far as spawning a reasonably balanced selection of dinosaurs, but this is the point where the whole project takes a bit of a shift. I've been doing game development for several years now, but it's only dawning on me at this point that I've never had to handle having so many characters in the world at one time. There's 100 dinosaurs, all with event timers running, animation blueprints, AI perception, behavior trees, movement components, etc, and so understandably so, The world tick time went up a lot and the game thread became expensive, but I hadn't thought about this, which is a complete oversight on my side. I hadn't considered that I may need to manage the characters and I didn't have a plan. I did a lot of trial and error, but I ultimately landed on a solution of my own. The dinosaurs have timer events running for things such as hunger, so I set up a disable actor event, which would turn off these events, disable tick on as many components as possible, and also hide the skeletal mesh. Surprisingly, hiding the skeletal mesh actually had the biggest impact on reducing the tick time. I then had an opposite event which would re-enable its timers, turn ticks back on, and reveal the skeletal mesh again. The disable and enable events are triggered based on a sphere trace that the player will do every 5 seconds or so. This was a distance-based solution, so anything too far away to see or engage with, it would be hidden, ticks would be turned off, and its cost would be reduced. And then anything close by, which you'll want to see and perhaps engage with, it will just run like normal. And this helped. When paired with the fact that blueprints are much more expensive to run in editor compared to a package build, the game thread became more reasonable. The performance had reared its head and it was starting to stare down at me. This is a challenging moment because so much time and progress has been put into this project already, and with day 10 out of 14 coming to a close, I know how little time is left. The time restriction, the concern of performance, and the fact that one of the most important parts of the game, world, was coming next. It was challenging. I thought this would be the most challenging moment. I was very wrong. I started day 11 with fresh eyes and the desire to not look at the performance costs for a bit. So I explored the new river simulation stuff in Unreal Engine 5.6. This is the whole reason I'm using 5.6, I just want to see what it's like. The river simulation stuff is cool, it really is. It's amazing how simple it is to bake it and the setup is pretty clean and easy. I can definitely see using this in future projects, so it was good to get hands on with it. It's time to create a prehistoric world, just a small casual task. I knew from the get-go that I wanted to handle this via PCG. I have the content, which is the assets, and they are individually optimized. I'm using Atlas sheets, a single master material with only a few material instances from it, many LODs all manually created and set up, and you can go quite dense with them, and it runs. I know this because I've tested it in previous projects. I'd also watched this Unreal Fest talk which outlines how to use level instances with PCG, which sounded great. So that was my plan for today. What's really cool about this approach is that you can take advantage of actor tags. Within your level instance, you can tag something like, give it the tag of tree for example, use it as a filter in your PCG graph, and then do something with it. In my case, I use tags to produce variation to the level instances by randomly hiding some of the larger assets. It's really basically a way of getting access to specific points. If you use PCG in Unreal and you haven't already seen that video, I really recommend going to check it out. It's good stuff. The approach was working well. I had the artistic control of the level instances themselves and they were then being randomly distributed. It was cool to see it working. The graph was a little slow to work with though, as every piece of foliage I paint in a level instance, it becomes a point within the graph. I want dense foliage, but having very dense points was slowing things down a lot. This is the first red flag of this approach. The next was performance. The issue here is the draw thread. Even with a fairly small PCG graph, the draw thread is running very high. Like, I expect there to be a cost, there is a lot of foliage, but it's suspiciously high. It was time to put a monocle and a top hat on and begin an ongoing investigation into the murder of the draw thread. As a detective, I know that the assets haven't previously been an issue in older projects when I used them with a foliage tool, so my suspicion naturally went to the PCG graph. Where is the performance? I proceeded to spend the rest of day 11 investigating this issue. I continued my investigation making comparisons between placement via the foliage tool and placement via PCG. I was finding minimal differences, which does make sense given that they are essentially both placed in instant static meshes. Seeing as PCG had an alibi, I was now looking for a new suspect in this ongoing investigation, and I was suspicious that there's something going on with Unreal Engine, and I think it might be related to 5.6. With it being a new update, I didn't find much online, so I took to an empty scene and started to test it myself. What I was finding was interesting. A scene using screen space global illumination, not lumen, and only a handful of ferns was about 13 milliseconds on the draw thread. For reference, the frame cost for 60 frames per second, it costs about 16.66 milliseconds. I don't know why I said about, it's exactly 16.66 milliseconds. So without really adding much to my scene, I'm left with about 3.5 milliseconds of budget to work with. It's not enough. I know this is a lot of troubleshooting talk, but that is just how the day went, and it's how game development sometimes goes. Due to how slow the PCG graph was to work with, given the amount of points the dense foliage would require, I decided to change tactic and work with a foliage tool. With this method, I would have greater artistic control and be able to balance the scene more. I'd have better control over individual culling distances, and very importantly, it would just be more enjoyable. Managing nodes and points isn't the same as crafting a scene. There's something going on with the draw thread. I think it could be something I'm doing, but I don't trust that the engine isn't at fault either. Either way, I don't have much choice other than to keep pushing forward, and I'll keep an eye on performance tomorrow in day 12. I woke up for day 12 determined to tackle the project with a smile. We're 88 hours deep into this project, and the unreliable performance, it was really impacting the forward momentum and motivation of it all. I am looking forward to doing one of my favourite parts of game development, and that's crafting worlds. I had what I needed to build up a cool space. It's like having the Lego parts to build something and just going ahead and doing it. I was quite annoyed that so much time had been wasting going down the PCG route when I could have / should have gone this way about it in the first place. But at least I learned some new things about PCG, and at the end of the day, all we can do is live and learn, right? Something I did do partway through this world creation was actually switch all the foliage to use nanite. What I didn't realise was that non-nanite foliage wasn't getting picked up in the lumen scene, so the global illumination just wasn't doing that much without it. Despite my foliage being masked, which means it's not made to be used with nanite really, the costs associated with making it nanite based, it was quite minimal, so it seemed like a win-win.
Win-win.
Win.
Done!
Unfortunately, there was only some minor performance improvements, but there were better visuals. I unfortunately did need to turn off the wind system I'd set up for my foliage. It just didn't work very well with nanite or virtual shadow mapping. My priority was just pushing forward and maintaining as much performance as I could, so I just turned it off. Now reopening the investigation again, I was starting to get suspicious that there's something to do with virtual shadow mapping which is causing the draw cost. I don't think it's exclusively responsible, it might be a two-man job, but I think it's a big factor. I did later notice, and it's a little embarrassing to admit, that I'd left a second character within the scene which I used as a scale reference, which means there's another camera drawing the scene, and upon deleting this, the draw thread did seem to go down. So between reducing the amount of foliage, casting shadows, enabling nanite, removing the character, controlling the cull distances, has all of this resulted in reducing the draw thread? Oh, maybe. This is the lowest it's been. It's not great, but it's okay. That small glimmer of hope was crushed very quickly because the next time I hit play, the cost went back up again. How is that possible? Nothing, and I mean nothing, has changed. How is the performance fine one time and not the next? What is going on? At this point in the project, I had to face the tough reality that if performance doesn't improve, I don't know if I'll be able to share the game with you. And I know it's a free-to-play game as part of a game development challenge, but I still wouldn't want to put it out there knowing that I can't even hit 30 FPS on it. It doesn't feel right, and I feel like I'd be letting you and myself down by doing that. To work on this for almost 100 hours at this point and have to admit to myself that I might have to say, you can't play this game because I was unable to get it to perform, and I'm not even able to explain why. That's a tough pill to swallow. This is the biggest challenge of the development, this moment. With tired eyes and my motivation having taken a whack, I noticed something. I think Unreal Engine has been somewhat gaslighting me for the past few days. When I first relaunch the engine, open the level and hit play, I can do that a couple of times and get decent enough performance. It's only after the third time of hitting play that the draw thread becomes unrealistically high again. So when I close and restart the engine, for the first time I was able to play the game with dense foliage, lumen, and dinosaurs in the scene. At the very end of today, day 12, I was able to play the game in its current state with smooth frame rates. I know it's not full screen, and I know it's an editor, so it's not reliable, but it was what I needed in this moment. A glimmer of hope that I'm not completely crazy. And when I went to play the game for the third or fourth time, having changed nothing, all of a sudden the draw thread was back up again. Something to do with the engine in 5.6 is making it so there's an accumulated cost after so many times of hitting play. I don't know what it is, but this confirmed that there is something more going on. And maybe, just maybe, I can get this to run and get it in your hands. With a little bit of my confidence restored, the world made, and only 2 more days to go, it was time for audio. Now, I've spoken about the importance of the world in a game design like this, and the audio is no small part of that, which is why I'm hoping to spend all day today making sure it's right. I had 3 main categories of sound I wanted to collect: player, dinosaurs and Jeep. These could be further broken down into footsteps, camera and vocalizations. I sourced 90% of the audio from Uppbeat Premium, including the 5 music tracks I used. 1 was a main theme, 3 for background tracks and 1 for danger. I did, once again, do something a bit different and new. I recorded my own audio for the camera. I modelled the camera using my own camera as a reference, and it felt fitting to get the genuine audio of it directly from the source. I did some cleanup and layering of both my sounds and Uppbeat sounds in Audacity. Footstep audio was generally implemented within the animations via anim notifies, except for the player, I set up a footstep tracing event. This will check the landscape for the physical material it is hitting, and depending on the material it hits, it will play a random sound of that material type. Dinosaurs had random vocalizations play to indicate different states. For example, a herbivore sensing danger will roar/groan loudly to warn others. Carnivores will rumble with deep growls, and herbivores will even make chewing noises when they eat. Don't worry, I made sure to get iconic sounds in there like the Velociraptor call and the T-Rex roar. There were quite a few issues with sounds overlapping with each other and the world generally just being too noisy, so I spent some time addressing these issues. Some were technical, some were design. The final thing I implemented was music. I have previously been quite lazy with music, having it just play randomly from a level blueprint, and well, that's basically it. I mean, it works, but in this case I wanted to have some danger music play whenever a carnivore was hunting. So I set up a music controller blueprint. This blueprint spawns a sound component which allows for music to be paused and played, and it also takes into account the length of time in seconds of the track currently playing. I had a bug in one of my games called Butterfly Island, which you can go and watch on this channel, where music was delayed on a fixed number, and so occasionally that meant tracks would just overlap with each other. I didn't realise you could get the length of time that a sound needs to fully play. See, living and learning. I'll tell you what, I'm going to be a genius after this project. There was a lot of audio to implement. I have about 60 plus sounds, and there's all the anim notifiers to set up for each movement animation, plus all the bug fixing of sounds playing too loud, too quiet. It still isn't perfect, but it has run me to the end of day 13. So now it's time for me to get to sleep for the last time working on this project. I had one last task, and that was menus. I started with the main menu. Enter the world will put you into the game, but the draw thread can take about 10 plus seconds to actually calm down and drop to a reasonable rate, which is ironic because it's done anything but keep me calm. So it was important that I put a loading screen in place to try and hide this. Obviously with you watching this video, it's not exactly hidden. You've seen the chaos, but let's pretend like it's all okay. At this point, I'm banking on the build hopefully having performance equivalent to what the engine is like when it's first opened and played, and it would make sense for it to be that way. Either way, I knew it wasn't going to be great, and I knew I'd have to sit here and explain to you that there's been a bunch of unexpected issues, and you might only get like 30 FPS, obviously depending on spec and resolution. Or would I? I next worked on the graphic settings menu. It's generally pretty standard with controls for everything you might find in the scalability settings. One last thing to set up, and that's the pause menu. You can access the graphic options from here, but I also added the ability to respawn your Jeep. There's a bug where the Jeep can sometimes go flying off when you enter it. I don't know why it happens, and it's one of those things where I may need a whole other day to figure it out. So my solution is to just give you the freedom to respawn the Jeep near you, whether it's for bug related reasons or you're just lazy. I'm not judging. I packaged the game up to test. There's a lot of work and a lot of cool stuff, but is it worth anything if there's performance issues? Hold on. The draw thread is reasonable. I'm getting around 60 FPS. What settings do I have on? It's turned up pretty high. It looks pretty good. I have unlimited render distance on, and I'm still getting 50 plus FPS. I couldn't believe it. I could actually play my game. It looked good, it ran smooth, I was loving it. Taking pictures of Triceratops, getting killed by velociraptors, driving the Jeep around. I sat and I played the game for like 15 to 20 minutes. Edited some photos, I explored. I seriously felt like a weight had been taken off my shoulders. Suddenly, on the final day, my attention went from, oh no, how can I get this over the finish line, to, how can I make this game even better before the end of day? And had I seriously been gaslit by the engine for nearly a week? Like, I know I've made mistakes in this project. I don't expect incredible performance. I mean, it's an ambitious game in a relatively tight time frame. But I knew something wasn't right. Performance has been the buzzword of this video, so whilst I'm playing the game and enjoying myself and taking notes on what to fix or improve, let me just summarise the situation very quickly. I think through an accumulation of making the foliage nanite, controlling what does/doesn't cast shadows, being quite strict with the culling distances, and even removing things like that extra character I'd left in, which was stupid on my part, and then also finding a balance of graphical settings, like I might turn down textures and shading, but I might increase the view distance. Now put all of that into a packaged game, and the performance has come out much better. But again, it's weird because earlier package builds did have a high draw thread, even in an empty scene. There is one other thing which has ended up playing a big factor in performance, and some of you might have already noticed it, but I'll reveal that in just a minute. But for now, I'm genuinely just excited to focus on how I can push the game further rather than just worrying about it. The final day and a new lease of life with the project. I started by improving the lighting. It felt a bit too white and washed out, the scene needed more contrast, saturation and depth. I redid the lighting, improved the fog, and improved the post-processing. I also fixed the roughness of the landscape in the distance so it didn't glare so much, as well as adding a Skysphere HDRI, which gave a much more stylized and interesting appearance compared to the default one. And because the performance was more reliable, I pushed the view distance and shadow casting of the foliage further. I had been quite aggressive with it, too aggressive, and so I relaxed it a bit to strike a better balance between not having Pokemon levels of render distance, but also not overwhelming the frame. I even improved the foliage density throughout. Who would have thought a few days ago that I'd be adding more foliage? I sure as hell didn't. One last feature I added was a crouch. It's very basic with it just moving the camera up and down with a flip-flop node, but it is a very nice addition. I'm so excited, I'm choking. Oh, and I'd also not told the player the controls for the game, you know, just that small little thing. So I added some UI overlays, which would change depending on whether you're the Jeep, the player, or in the camera view. I'm rushing like mad for the final day, but I'm okay with it because it feels like positive change, and I now know I can share this game with a bit more confidence that you can actually play it. Now, I mentioned before that there was something else affecting the performance. And it wasn't until I was trying to fix the resolution setting not applying that I realised what it was. I couldn't get the preset resolutions of 1920 by 1080 or 2560 by 1440, for example, to apply. So instead I thought I could do it as screen percentage, since there's a console command for that. It's at this point that I realised for some reason the package build had defaulted me to playing at 60% of my screen percentage. My monitor is 2560 by 1440, so it goes down to about 1552 by 873, which is somewhere between 1080p and 720p. What I found amazing was how little I noticed this. So my fix of using screen percentage instead of resolution presets, it was actually a blessing in disguise, and I'm quite surprised I've not seen more games do this. Maybe there's a reason for it, but it seems like a good idea to me. What this allows me to do is find a percentage I'm happy with, such as like 72%, which for me is approximately 1080p, and then increase other settings which I'm more bothered about. Like I say, I couldn't really notice the lower resolution, which is crazy, because I usually notice those things. I think it's a testament to the anti-aliasing and the temporal super resolution and even the global illumination on higher settings. After everything in the final build on mostly epic settings at just over 1080p, I'm getting anywhere from 50 to 60 FPS. Is it incredible? No. Is it double what I thought it was going to be with much better visual quality than I expected? Yeah, absolutely. And that to me is a huge win. I'll put my CPU and GPU on screen now so you can make a general comparison for your own spec. It is also worth noting that if I don't have global illumination on at all, I do get up to 100 FPS. It's been a hell of a turnaround performance wise, and quite frankly, a hell of a journey altogether. All of this game came about because I wanted to play a game, which didn't exist. And in the same way every game starts, it started as an idea, a spark of excitement to play something which only you can make. And so that's what I did. I sat and I played my game. I captured a bunch of different photos and got to experience what is ultimately a small slice of a much bigger idea. But still the essence and core of it is here, and it's pretty cool. Whether it's seeing a herd of Triceratops running together through a field of ferns, or seeing a Spinosaurus in its natural habitat of the river, or maybe you hear the iconic Hollywood roar of the T-Rex in the background. It's a game about moments for those who like dinosaurs, and there's plenty of moments to be found throughout. This is the magic of game development, the ability to wake up, conjure an idea, and bring it to life. If anything, I hope this video showcases that. Go check it out for yourself over on itch.io, and I think you'll enjoy it. Make sure to hit the like button. It is a huge help, like it really is. It helps to put this video in front of like-minded people such as yourself, so hopefully they can also enjoy the video. And check out the rest of my content over on my channel, because there's plenty more to watch and plenty more on the way. If you've made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.